I want to start with Mike McGlinchey because there's a lot banking on how healthy he's actually going to be. The 49ers have a lot of questions on that offensive line. He suffered a torn quadricep last November. Realistically, because there's talks that he tore the muscle off the bone, which just doesn't sound pleasant. Realistically, is this something that we could expect him to come back 100% on, or is it something that we're always going to have to kind of keep an eye on?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. In general, this injury, we don't see a lot in players, whether it be the NBA or the NFL. I mean, it's really this injury you see in like 50, 60-year-old people. They're going up the stairs, they're kind of decompensating, they tear that tendon off. You just don't see it in athletes a lot. You see a lot more commonly the patellar tendon, which is kind of lower down below the kneecap. And you're absolutely right. The reason why this is a bad injury is that anytime a tendon pulls off the bone, not only do you have to get that to basically heal back to the bone, but the tendon and muscle itself has to regain its strength. So they're kind of two phases with this rehab. So unfortunately, when you look at NFL players who've had this, only about 60 to 70% of them actually come back to play. So it looks like at least we're on that path, like he's going to play. But then you look at statistics afterwards, and players do have a decrease in the performance. And it's just because it's hard to get this tissue, which has basically been destroyed. If you get it to heal back, it's still going to be weaker. The big question is, how much is it going to impact him playing? Now, for someone who's on the line, someone who's not doing as much explosive activity like a wide receiver or running back, probably a little bit better chance that even though you have a little bit decrease in your kind of overall strength, you'll be okay. The fact that he's made it this far, it appears like he's progressing well in terms of his rehab. That's a positive sign. But I think people need to be patient this first season for the players who do come back. That first season is where you see that statistical drop off. And then hopefully the second season, if he's still with the team, is where you really see him come back to that same level.
And that's literally the next question that I was going to have. And I think it is trending towards him being in camp and him being on the field. Then the question turns into how effective he is, because we know how the right tackle, the left tackle are so paramount in this running game, and how much it matters, and how well in the run game he is. And I, everybody has their gripes with pass protection, things like that. That's fine. But the 49ers do need him to bounce back to a certain degree for this offense to, continue motoring along, especially with the youngster probably going to be under center as well too. Actually, I have a question from Tony. He's asking, can stem cell therapy be effective in cases like these?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, typically the type of stem cell treatment you use is something called PRP, which is using your own platelets. So basically what you do is you draw your own blood, spin it down, and get the platelets, which are basically the stuff that kind of helps you form scabs and kind of really helps. So a lot of times during surgery, that'll be injected or afterwards to help with healing. So anytime you do have a tendon injury, there is more and more evidence that can actually help, number one, speed the healing process, and also make what grows back a lot stronger. So absolutely, I would not be surprised if this was used during the surgery that McGlinchey had.
Great question from Tony, as always. One of our better our better question askers, if that's even a way to speak about it.
Yeah, he's been here since day one. Also, another thing with McGlinchey too, something that's been monitored very closely by 49er fans is his weight. We've talked a lot about him gaining weight, losing weight, gaining weight. It seems like it's a conversation every year. I know there was a photo that came out a couple weeks ago of him looking very small, but he posted a picture of, a scale of wherever he's at now. How important is it going to be with this type of injury for him to stay in, whatever may be the target weight area for a right tackle in the NFL? How important is that? Is that paying attention to the weight going to be for the rehab of this injury?
I think it's important. I think in general, I worry more about like overweight, a little bit more. I mean, that picture, you can always play around with angles and things like that. Look like he was like 150 pounds, Yeah. I think the less weight you have, because that muscle is going to have to do more work. You definitely want to kind of be on the lower side, obviously, but enough to maintain that power. So I think kind of being at a right around or maybe a little bit below a right tackle weight is really, really important. And going back to your point, Jason, about kind of like the particular 49ers offense and how he fits in, I think pass protection is going to be fine when you have a quad injury. You're basically holding your ground, making sure individuals aren't getting past you. But with the outside zone scheme where you're having to make kind of rapid movements, running backs are making those split second decisions, and then the offensive line has to go with him. That's where you're worried about it a little bit more. Is he going to be able to react quickly and have that power to change directions and do things like that? So it'll be interesting to see how Shanahan uses them. Is he going to say, look, when we have more passing downs, or we're going to be doing more kind of controlled maneuvers, is McGlinchey going to be playing more? Or if it's more of a game where there is more running going on, are you going to see him play less? And I think that will be kind of an indicator of how his repair is doing based on how often you see him in these different situations.
So speaking about back to that video of him running, and if there is no answer for this, please, feel free to say I have no idea. But where would you say that you gauge his recovery at this point from the video of him running with the, I believe it was like the tension parachute and things like that?
Yeah.
Is there a way to tell from that small video?
Yeah, I think that's actually running's a huge marker in terms of recovery. So, when you take someone in general, just like a regular person off the street who has this right around 6 months, we kind of say, look, you can run, go do everything. That means you're healed. So the fact that their surgeons are saying, look, go and run means that he's actually got that process where tendon is actually back to the bone. It's healed good. Now it's that kind of a little bit more of a cloudy process of can he get his strength back and can he be effective? So that's exactly what you want. The surgery apparently went well. He's allowed to run, but now can he build his strength back up to the high enough level to be effective at the NFL level? So that's what we're going to see as kind of training camp goes on. But that's exactly at this time point, exactly what you want to see him doing.